Say her name, say her name, say her name. She cannot be forgotten by us.
Say her name, say her name, say her name, say her name.
Say her name, say her name, say her name. She cannot be forgotten by us.
Say her name, say her name, say her name, say her name.
Put her name in the air. 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 Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. She cannot be forgotten by us. Say her name. 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 She cannot be forgotten by us. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name.
Say her name.
Breonna Taylor.
Say her name.
Tatiana Jefferson.
Pamela Turner.
Philando Castile.
Jacob Blake.
John Neville.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Slavery, Race, and Memory Project's annual commemoration of the enslaved. My name is Cami Chavis. I am Vice Provost and Professor of Law at Wake Forest University, and I'm also the co-chair of the Wake Forest Slavery, Race, and Memory Project. We opened today's commemoration with the beautiful song, Say Her Name, performed by Wake Forest University's concert choir and the Winston-Salem State University Singing Rams. It's proper and fitting that this musical expression of present day events connects us to the realities of the past. This song mentioned many familiar names of victims of modern day violence and brutality perpetuated against Black Americans. Today, we remember those who experienced the violent and brutal institution of slavery. The institution of slavery is woven tightly within the fabric of our country, and the sacrifices of the enslaved indeed buttress the very foundation of our university. The mission of the Wake Forest University Slavery, Race, and Memory Project is to guide the research, preservation, and communication of an accurate depiction of slavery in the United States and the university's relationship to slavery and its implications across Wake Forest's history and that of the United States. Slavery, Race, and Memory Project is an academically centered project whose central aim is to educate our university and the broader community about slavery and its legacy, and to do so with truth, integrity, and transparency. This project, as you will see today, when we say the names of the enslaved, includes every constituency of our university: students, staff, faculty, alumni, and members of the Board of Trustees are all participating today to honor the enslaved. One central truth: to be enslaved meant to endure rape, torture, dismemberment, or even death at the whim of your enslaver. Enslavers necessarily had to deny the humanity of those upon whom they inflicted these evils. This commemoration specifically lifts up the names of those humanity their enslavers denied. Examining the truth of the past, of that past, honors those whose forced labor continues to benefit and touch those presently connected to the university. My co-chair, Dean Tim Pyatt, will tell us more about the significance of today's commemoration and why we say their names.
Thank you, Cami, for that introduction. Yes, I'm Tim Pyatt, and I'm the Dean of the Z. Smith Rhodes Library and co-chair with Cami. So you're probably wondering, why are we holding this commemoration today? Well, it's because on May 7th, 1860, Wake Forest sold 16 individuals to create our first endowment. This truth lay silent for many years, but on May 7th, 2019, students and faculty from the School of Divinity and the Sociology Department gathered on the steps of Waite Chapel to remember those souls in the first commemoration event. These are not the only individuals sold to benefit the school, and we also use numerous enslaved people to maintain the school and serve the students and faculty. This growing list of individuals was acknowledged by Professor Joseph Suarez, his class, and community members last May 7th online. This year, we remember and say the names of all the individuals we know and acknowledge those names we do not yet know. The work to acknowledge and repair our past continues, and today is but one step forward on our journey towards reconciliation. And now I'll turn it over to Dean Jonathan Lee Walton for our invocation.
My friends, let us assume a posture of prayer, meditation, and/or reflection. O God of truth and justice, we gather today to honor, affirm, and solemnly celebrate the humanity of those whose lives were sacrificed for this institution on May 7th, 1860. We realize that any recognition in death is an insignificant recompense for the dehumanization that they experienced in life. But yet, God, we come. We gather, we honor, we name. We gather today to expand and challenge our own conception of pro humanitate, for humanity. We repent, O God, for the exclusive ways we have defined humanity in the past and the continued ways we privilege the humanity of some and thus diminish the humanity of all. And we pray for descendants, known and unknown, of those whose lives were forever transformed by the unjust actions of this institution's founders. Have mercy on them, O God, wherever they may be right now. And have mercy on us as an institution if we do not commit to not only acknowledge the sins of our past, but also commit to lessening the sorrow, uprooting the poverty, and negating the suffering of all whose humanity is denied and ignored in our world today. On May 7th, 2021 and beyond. For this, O God, is when Pro Humanitate will be more than a motto, but a sincere mission. This is our prayer. This is our humble plea. Amen. Please receive the Wake Forest Professor of the Humanities and Director of the Program in African American Studies, Dr. Corey D.B. Walker.
Thank you, Dean Walton. One who would understand the history of Wake Forest College must have some knowledge of the social, economic, and educational conditions out of which it arose. This is the first sentence of the first paragraph of the first chapter in the multi-volume history of Wake Forest University. 3 sentences later, we read the following. The census of 1830 showed in the state 403,295 whites, 19,543 free Negroes, and 245,601 slaves. In as many as 20 counties, the Negroes outnumbered the whites. The history of Wake Forest University is inextricably intertwined with the institution of chattel slavery. Our official history begins with this context. However, all too often, we have chosen to narrate our history without heeding the message contained in the first sentence of the first paragraph of the first chapter of our institutional history. One who would understand the history of Wake Forest College must have some knowledge of the social, economic, and educational conditions out of which it arose. Yet with today's ceremony, we chart a new and truer course for our university. We choose now to recognize the full import of the first sentence of the first paragraph of the first chapter of our institutional story. We choose a fuller history, a more complete history, one which confronts and attempts to meet the challenge of understanding the social, economic, and educational conditions out of which Wake Forest arose. Those conditions are bound to the lives, histories, and legacies of 6 men, 7 women, and 3 children sold at public auction on May 7th, 1860, as part of the first bequest to the university. The first bequest that was made in 1836 to create a permanent fund for poor and indigent young men destined for the ministry. This bequest consisted of property, a plantation, houses, lots, and a dozen Negro slaves. These are the social, economic, and educational conditions out of which our Wake Forest arose. Yet, the etymology of the term bequest has an older meaning. That meaning is to say or to speak. It is this sense that we, as heirs to this bequest, are gathered here today to say their names, to speak their humanity, to say a fuller story, and to fully acknowledge what has been passed on to us. And our history remains incomplete. And this remembrance is not total, for memories and recollections won't give us total access to the unwritten interior lives of these people, 6 men, 7 women, and 3 children, our ancestors, our founders. One who would understand the history of Wake Forest College must have some knowledge of the social, economic, and educational conditions out of which it arose. Let us now say their names.
Today, we remember the enslaved individuals who were sold by or worked for Wake Forest College, now university. These names come from the History of Wake Forest by George Pascal, archival research by Andrew Kennedy for his forthcoming book, the University Archives in the Z. Smith Reynolds Library, and from the Wake Forest Historical Museum. An 1834 Wake Forest account book shows that 4 enslaved African Americans were hired that year. The names listed were Alec, Harry and wife, Charlotte.
As student numbers grew, more enslaved Blacks were hired from their owners in the coming years, including 13 in 1835, Johnson, Anderson, James, Linder, Mary, Sarah, Phyllis, Mary, Lucy, Venus, Patience, Mary, George.
Another 16 were hired from their owners in 1836. Murphy, Ted and wife Amy Jones and their 2 children, Rose, Martha, Lexi, Mary Sherwood, Aggie, her children, and Miranda, Mary Harris, David, and Anderson.
In 1835, John Berry, a local architect from Hillsboro, was contracted to build this large multi-storied brick complex. Berry's workforce was made up of enslaved laborers, and they were moved with him to Wake Forest during the construction process. As the college building was being completed, 2 of these enslaved African-American men were killed in a fall. We remember those 2 men whose names we do not yet know.
We remember the enslaved college servant who swept and cleaned the college building. Numerous enslaved Blacks were hired for this role during the remaining antebellum period. We remember Verton and the other college servants whose names we do not yet know.
In the 1840s, Celia Wilder, a woman from Hertford County, dictated that 2 of her slaves, Betty and Inez, be sold after her death, and that the proceeds of this sale, $600, be given to the college. We remember Betty and we remember Inez.
In 1836, John Blunt died and left a major bequest to Wake Forest that included land, homes, and enslaved individuals. His wife, Rebecca Blunt, was given lifetime rights and remained in possession of this property and these enslaved people until her death in November of 1859. A slave auction was held on May 7, 1860, and the proceeds used to start the college's first endowment. Today we remember Harvey, Tom, Venus and Child, Mary, Emma, Lettice, Isaac, Jim, Lucy, Caroline, Pompey, Emma, Nancy, Harriet, Ann Child, Joseph, Harry, Thomas, Mary, Anne, and 2 children.
There are gaps in the archival record and sources that have not yet been brought to light. To remember these unseen individuals finally acknowledged as integral to Wake Forest existence is a worthy effort. The work to honor the enslaved individuals who built and ensured daily operation of our college during the first 30 years continues. We remember those individuals whose humanity was not seen, whose names we do not yet know. Please join in a moment of silence as we broaden our minds and remember. Thank you. Thank you for joining with us in this new tradition. For the last several years, Wake Forest people have worked to be more transparent in telling our history, to address racial inequity in our present community, and to reaffirm our commitments for the future. Much of the work to disentangle our history from the myths used to cover shameful acts has been done by the members of the Slavery, Race, and Memory Project, while the President's Commission on Race, Equity, and Community has tackled the ongoing inequities attributable to our failure to let go of those myths over the intervening centuries. Last summer, in the midst of the pandemic swamping normal operations, as a commitment to our future, President Hatch recognized that it was time to develop a plan to take action on the findings uncovered by the Slavery, Race, and Memory Project. To make that possible, he appointed the Advisory Committee on Naming to reflect the various constituencies of Wake Forest's system of shared governance. Under our shared governance, responsibility for carrying out the school's mission is shared among a board of trustees, administration, and faculty. Current students and staff and alumni also have important interests and voices. The Advisory Committee on Naming consists of representatives from all of these groups. The Advisory Committee was given a 3-part charge arising out of the Slavery, Race, and Memory Project's ongoing work: to devise a set of guiding principles and decision rubrics for our community to approach naming and renaming in the future, to convene teams of researchers who would use the decision rubrics, applying the guiding principles to analyze and understand the historical records of Wake Forest's antebellum leaders, and to develop a process for the broader community to suggest names for possible recognition in future naming activities of Wake Forest. In March, we shared the guiding principles with the entire Wake Forest community and invited everyone to participate in a conversation about expanding the narrative of Wake Forest University. We've also shared some of the researchers' analyses on the university's website. As a member of the Board of Trustees, I've been honored to co-chair the Advisory Committee with Jonathan Lee Walton, Dean of our Divinity School. We are grateful for those faculty, staff, trustees, student, and alumni leaders who joined us in this work. I offer my profound thanks to all of them and to many others who participated in the community conversations. We could not have made it to this point without their collaborative efforts, varying viewpoints, insights, and counsel. It was our former professor, Maya Angelou, who said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Thanks to the research and work of the Slavery, Race, and Memory Project, we know better. Although there is more work to do, we can now do better. At the April trustee meeting, the Advisory Committee on Naming presented our work and discussed actions that might help our community to expand the narrative of the university. Recently, I had the opportunity to join with President Hatch and leaders of the Board of Trustees to record an important announcement about where we go from here as we gain greater understanding of our past and work to live up to our aspirations for the future. We share that with you now.
Greetings. Today, I am joined by leaders of the Board of Trustees, Chair Gerald Roach, Vice Chair Herman Ury, and former Chair Donna Boswell, to share how our community continues to illuminate our history, address our present, and reaffirm our commitments for the future. I am profoundly grateful for so many in our community who have worked hard for us to address issues of race and equity over the last several years. The President's Commission, co-chaired by Jose Villalba and Erica Still, the Slavery, Race, and Memory Project, co-chaired by Cami Chavis and Tim Pyatt, and the Advisory Committee on Naming, co-chaired by Jonathan Walton and Donna Boswell. There have been scores of people involved in these efforts, and to all of them, I offer heartfelt thanks. Most recently, the Advisory Committee on Naming has been examining meaningful ways to contextualize, remember, and honor significant figures in Wake Forest history. Trustees, administrators, faculty, staff, students, and alumni have come together to discuss how we can expand the narrative of the university. Their work has widened our understanding of the context of how our institution was started and under what circumstances it operated in the antebellum South. As we consider our history, especially the antebellum period of our history, I would like to give a backdrop of how, in general terms, we should think about history and the past. I see 5 guideposts for us as we explore history and the past. We need a self-conscious reckoning with the past. We need to avoid the false dichotomy of our 2 dominant narratives. We need humility and empathy to fully explore history. We need to accept that people of goodwill may disagree with our position. And we need to preserve hope. First, we need a self-conscious reckoning with the past. We need to examine the entire tapestry, good, bad, and indifferent, or to use the title of a recent book, The Splendid and the Vile. C.S. Lewis once said of humankind that nothing too good or too bad could be said about it. Any coming to terms with the past must attend to both of these and how often they are inextricably linked. Second, we need to avoid 2 dominant and seemingly dichotomous narratives in our culture that in some ways are the mirror reflection of each other. A heroic view, one of a comforting and reassuring story of upward progress, which despite flaws is filled with inspiration and success. The other is that the past is so corrupt and fallen that we should renounce and repudiate it completely. In this view, because history does not meet up to our current ethical standards, it should be ignored if not actively denounced. Both of these narratives are active in the marketplace of ideas, and we should avoid being placed in either of these boxes. Third, we should explore the past with humility and empathy. Humility because of our failures and incomplete understanding, and because most of us are subject to current customs and points of view as people were in the past. And we know that future generations will look at even those of us who are most principled and ask, how could they have held to that belief? Or why did they sit on the sideline and not take up that cause? Shall we judge and not presume that one day we will be judged? And empathy. I've deeply appreciated the perspective of Abraham Lincoln. As the Civil War drew to a close, he declared that it had been fought to destroy slavery, and the cost of that conflagration was staggering beyond words. He was unflinching in his realism, using powerful imagery about two kinds of violence. He wondered whether every drop of blood drawn with the lash was being paid by another drawn with the sword. In his view, truth was marching on, but it was a path that had been violent and bloody. Yet even in saying this, in his second inaugural, in the very next sentence, he held out an olive branch of empathy and hope and forgiveness. With malice towards none, he said, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and orphan, to do all which we may to achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. We owe the same deep human connection to our ancestors, even if we cannot honor all that they stood for or all that they did. Fourth, people of goodwill disagree on how to adjudicate these complex matters. Everyone comes to this discussion with their own perspectives, experiences, and ideals. Many times, people join this conversation from various positions and places. The New York Times columnist Bret Stephens, in writing about which statues should fall and which should remain, concluded in this fashion: a great debate about who should remain on which pedestals can be a healthy one. The right's idea that we must preserve the worst figures to protect them does not make sense. The left's idea that we should bring down the best because we know who they were at their worst is also flawed. An intelligent society should be able to make intelligent distinctions. In making our own judgments about the names on buildings and in other places within the university, we are called upon to make intelligent distinctions. And people of goodwill may disagree about exactly where lines should be drawn. Fifth, we need to fight to preserve hope. We need to tell a more inclusive story and to refrain from honoring certain figures in that story. We must not do so in anger and resentment. We have hope that a more nuanced and complete history will point to a more welcoming and hospitable community that we are committed to building. With this framework in mind, and with the work of the Advisory Committee on Naming available and made public on our website, the university trustees recently discussed how we remember, acknowledge, and honor our history. Together, we want to remember and recount the full story that despite their differing moral views, all four antebellum presidents, Samuel Waite, William Hooper, John Brown White, and Washington Manly Wingate, gave service to Wake Forest out of their belief that education was a vehicle for engaging human minds and improving the life of one's community. We acknowledge that expanding the narrative of the university allows us to discuss with transparency the greater Wake Forest story. By truly understanding our history, we reaffirm our predecessors' belief in the power of education and help broaden their empathy for all human beings. We want to honor and follow the path charted by many students and faculty who have helped broaden our view of humanity, especially during the Civil Rights Movement. They demonstrated the ability of Wake Forest to deepen and expand the commitment to an education that benefits our world by challenging the beliefs that limited our predecessors. In order to truly expand the narrative of Wake Forest, not erasing the past, but building on it to understand both the good and the bad, we are taking critical steps to name, honor, and remember. These actions represent the principled way the university intends to come to terms with its antebellum heritage. With the full support of the University Board of Trustees, we will rename Wingate Hall to May 7th, 1860 Hall. By renaming this building, we acknowledge the university's participation in slavery and reminded of this period of our history, and remember those who served the institution against their will and whose lives were even further diminished by Wake Forest actions on May 7th, 1860. Additionally, we will create a memorial that provides context and greater understanding of our university's antebellum history. It will recognize those who, across much of our story, have been erased or invisible. I want to thank all the members of this community who have sought to create a deeper understanding of our story, the good and the bad. Through these steps, all of these efforts, we will continue to become a place that learns to live more fully and inclusively pro humanitate. And in doing so, we narrow the gap between the ideals we profess and the lives we lead. Thank you.